1 week down, 2 to go. Mind you, one does have the Pyrenees in it and the other's got the Alps. Bradley Wiggins talks to us about his first 7 days on the tour and the 14 to come. As the sprinters struggle to get their acts together, we talk to the last man to get it right in Vitré, Marcel Wust. And bowing to public demand for 1 day only, the podcast gets pictures. We have seen the future, and it looks like Matt Rendle.
Good evening, welcome to the non-downloadable version of ITV's Tour de France coverage. Well, of course, it's only a matter of time. Mind you, we all thought it was only a matter of time before Tom Burnham's first stage win, but increasingly the obligation on him to produce one looks like a large albatross perched on his shoulders in the final kilometre, ruining his aerodynamics for the sprint. Jimmy Casper, Robbie McEwen twice, and now Oscar Freire. They're taking it in turns to beat the Belgian world champion, and the longer his losing streak goes on, the more forced his grin looks on the leaders' podium. He does lead the race, though, by 13 seconds from Australia's Michael Rogers, with Oscar Freire now third after yesterday's stage win, ahead of George Hincapie, Thor Hushovd and Robbie McEwen. Paolo Savoldelli and Floyd Landis are just outside the top 6, both within 30 seconds of the lead. Just beyond 30 seconds are Cadel Evans and David Miller. Bradley Wiggins is already 15 minutes down. Then nobody said it was going to be easy.
So 1 week down, I thought I'd see how Britain's Bradley Wiggins tour was shaping up. Last night, I dropped past the Cofidis team hotel to meet the man himself.
I can't believe we've got a week done already. What with all the prologue and the few days before that and all the scandal and everything, it's just flown by.
What are the memorable moments so far?
Certainly being the break yesterday and you know, being in the action and all the, you know, the TV and things yesterday was sort of lived up to what the Tour de France is all about. But yeah, you know, just the whole experience as a whole, really, you know, you never get time to stop and do anything. It's just there's always something to do on the Tour de France.
Going into today's stage, Bradley was 159th in GC, 15 minutes and 14 seconds behind the yellow jersey Tom Boonen. But his job here is to look after the Cofidis team leader David Moncoutier and sprinter Jimmy Casper, who've both been involved in falls.
Moncoutier crashed in the second crash of 4K to go, so I had to wait for him as well. But yeah, I mean, GC, it doesn't matter if I finished last year in Paris. It's just you know, every day I just seem to lose a little bit of time in the finishes. But yeah, it's irrelevant really. My sort of goal was to come here for the prologue and to experience the whole tour. But you know, my job here just in this week is to look after Jimmy, and then when we get to the mountains, there's guys like Ivan Para and Moncoutier that are looking for stage wins and trying to help them get to the front for the big mountains and then get out of the way. So it's quite a relaxed setup compared to what I was the previous years of Crédit Agricole. Not in the sense that it's not as professional, but just the pressure is not as high. At Crédit Agricole, it was all for Thor Hushovd. Here we've got a number of guys that can do something in this race. And just generally the atmosphere in the team's a lot better. It's much more objective orientated, the team, so it's really good.
So who are your mates in the team? Who do you share a room with?
I'm in with Moncoutier at the moment, but you just whoever you are. I mean, everyone gets on in the team. That's the sort of beauty of this team, is just we all seem to be good friends and get on, but you know, when you get to the mountains in something like the Tour de France, it's all for one and one for all. I think that's the attitude everyone seems to have. So,
as a time trial specialist, Bradley is looking forward to the time trial, but he'd be riding to gain experience, not for the win.
The time trial on Saturday is a little bit too long for me, really, but I'll give it a go and see how it goes, really. So far it's just whisked by, and I think that will be sort of how it continues, really, until we get to Paris, and you'll sort of look back and try and pick points out that you remember most. But I think it'll just be a bit of a blur, really.
Now then, we all know that Bradley Wiggins is a brilliant time trialist, but 4 kilometres on the track is very different from 52 on the open road. Tomorrow, Bradley will be out on his own, and so will everyone else. Stage 7, the individual time trial from Saint-Grégoire to Rennes, will be the first big shakeout of this year's tour. By the end of it, we'll have a much better idea of which of those riders who've nominated themselves as favourites have got the legs to back up their bravado. And we will have the stage for you live from 3:15 tomorrow afternoon. Should be a fascinating day's racing, and it'll certainly produce a new race leader. So if Tom Burnham wants to win a stage in the yellow jersey, today's his last chance.
There is stage 6, the flattest we've had since leaving Strasbourg, and it takes us from Lisieux to Vitré and Normandy into Brittany. Pouring down at the stage start this morning, and Chris Boardman, the further west we go, the less predictable the weather seems to be.
Well, very much so. I think the day is going to stay overcast, but forecast is for the rain to lift. That niggling crosswind's going to stay there, and in the closing kilometres, that could mean that not everybody gets to the finish at the same time.
Well, there were the usual various escape attempts early on in the stage, and finally a three-man group got the approval of the peloton. As we pick it up inside the last 50 kilometres, those three men are still out front. Commentary as ever from Paul Sherwin, and first, Phil Lickerton.
So the situation, 3:08, the peloton still deciding how they're going to catch these three riders, which are Magnus Baxter, Florian Bard, Anthony Jeslam. They left a group of 18, which included Tom Boonen. The peloton wanted Tom Bonen's group back. They got him. These boys have been allowed to run, but the gap is coming down, and so is the race towards the finish as well.
Yes, these three riders actually are the survivors of an 18-man group that got clear at 70 kilometres, and in that 18-man group there were two big pre-race favourites, or pre-sprint favourites I should say. Thor Hushovd got himself into that move, so did Tom Boonen. Boonen saw the breakaway move and thought, I'll have a bit of that if I might, and they built up a lead of 1.5 minutes. It actually then came down to a situation where these three riders moved away from that leading group of 18, and once Tom Boonen was caught by the main field, the elastic snapped and these riders built up a lead which stretched to 5.5 minutes, and then the main field started to take it a little bit more seriously and started to pull it back. And now we've got a number of sprinters teams on the front end of the main field bringing it back slowly but surely.
Blue jersey there was the youngest rider in the race, Thomas Löfqvist at 22, champion of Sweden just the week before he came to the Tour de France. Looking there, I think, at the team manager of the Case d'Appern team. And he's lost his leader really in Alejandro Valverde, which is a great shame because he crashed and broke his collarbone so early on. 45.9 kilometres, 2:58 now, so we've ducked inside the 3-minute margin. That is not good for the race, I'm afraid. Oh, well, it's good for the race, it's not good for the three leaders. Florian Bard, the champion of France here. Nice to put the tricolour jersey as champion up in front of the cameras, but he knows it's not going to last much longer.
Just see the red scarf there around the team manager's shoulders. That's to indicate that we're coming into the Saint-Firmin, and that is to celebrate and coincide with the start of the running of the bulls in Pamplona. In fact, there's a lot of people protesting about it this year, and I saw that 2 people had decided they were going to run the bulls naked as a protest against how cruel they thought it was. But normally none of the bulls actually get injured. More humans get injured than bulls, actually.
Well, I can't think of a more silly thing to do is to run through the crowd in millions of people being chased by bulls, but I suppose everybody to their own. As I watched the Tour de France today, and big Magnus Baxter here, I think he would give a bull a run for the money, because this man weighs just over 90 kilos, about 190 pounds, as he now continues as leader of the Tour on the road today. 45 kilometres left to ride, 2 minutes 50 seconds the gap. The peloton being driven all of the time. Remember, we're coming to the end of the reign of the sprinters today. We've had some flat stages for them to enjoy, a rare occasion in the Tour de France these days, but it's all going to change tomorrow with the time trial, and after the time trial there'll be a new pecking order at the top of the overall classification, as they try now to make the most of what will be their final chance at shooting at that maillot jaune, the yellow jersey.
I tell you what, Phil, I think your man Oscar Freire is feeling quite confident here this afternoon, because this is the first time we've really seen Rabobank taking a little bit of interest in setting the pace at the front end of the main field. You know, Rabobank, I think, are looking for win number 2 here with Freire.
Well, McEwen hasn't won 2 in a row yet, but he might get it this time for Freire.
Teams of a number of sprinters now are making a very earnest chase. This is why the sprinters have been so successful this year. We've got such a whole host of sprinters in the Tour de France this year that these men now are using 3 or 4 different teams to organize the pacemaking on the front. This is a little bit of a problem at the back. I think we can look here at this rider from Phonak. This is Alexander Moos, former Swiss national champion, taking on board drinks for the team. And many of these riders will carry up to 5 or 6 bottles up. He's got a raincoat in the back there, because we did have a little bit of rain in the early part of the course. The first time it is actually fairly cloudy here as well, looking up from the commentary position. Fairly low clouds, big tailwind for the riders over the last 30 or 40 kilometres, so we will start to pick up quite a fair amount of speed as we now look at around about 43 kilometres to go to the finish.
Hi, I'm Magnus Baxter. You're watching the Tour de France on ITV.
Welcome back to ITV's coverage of today's Stage 6. Now, we've got a new service on ITV this year. It's the podcast. It's free, and this is how you get it. Simply go to the ITV website, www.itv.com/tour, and then you navigate your way to where it says podcast down on the left-hand side. Click on that, and it'll give you an option to download it onto your computer. Now, while that's downloading, let me introduce you to the face of the podcast. Chris Boardman, you already know. Matt Rendell, what will we have on the podcast today?
Well, Graham, we've got a very insightful interview with Michael Rogers, who's bullish about tomorrow's time trial and also about T-Mobile's chances for the rest of this year's tour. We also hope to be speaking to David Miller a bit later on, plus there'll be the usual stage roundup and insight from Chris Boardman.
Excellent. So if you want to know what's going on behind the scenes on the tour, get that podcast, put it onto your MP3 player and listen to it on the way to work.
1 minute 30, Paul, and the horrible sight now, that gap represents 1.5 minutes.
Well, the horrible thing about it is it's a very long straight road, and the main field now, they can see their prey as they have done on every day of the Tour de France since we left Strasbourg. We've had a breakaway attempt go, and down towards the end, all of a sudden the main field starts to see the prey, and that's when the guys who are suffering on the front, those team workers, the team helpers, the domestiques, they've been suffering like dogs for the last 30 or 40 kilometers, but now they can see why. They can see the cars in front. They can't actually physically see the riders, but they can see the lights flashing. They can see the helicopter over the top of these riders, and they know the job is almost done.
By the end of the day, we'll be just on 1,300 kilometers ridden in the Tour de France in this first week of racing, about 750 miles or so. Johan van Summeren has been a brilliant workhorse for Robbie McEwen. He's been repaid well too, because McEwen in this opening week to date won 2 stages and has a lead in the green jersey competition of 1 point. Florent Brad, who left the French teams and joined this Spanish team, Case d'Apan, which is the Balearic Islands team as well, sponsored him. Magnus Bagsted, he rides on an Italian team, Liquigas.
Getting themselves all concentrated. It's a tough situation psychologically to be in for those riders now, because they're keeping a very close eye on the time checks as we're keeping a close eye on the time checks. They're looking at the boards to see how far it is to go to the finish, and they know what exactly is happening. Now, this is an interesting heart rate coming through on the computer, because Jose Riano is a rider we haven't talked an awful lot about. Won the King of the Mountains in the Giro. He's at maximum heart rate attainable of 195 beats a minute. And at the moment, stuck in the main field, he's getting sucked along by the pressure of the slipstreams of all the bigger riders in front of him, and he's hovering there at 140. That's almost 60% of his maximum. He could be a dark horse when we get to the mountains.
Well, we'll see. Another one we can give you is Ralph Grabsch. He's also cruising today, putting out 204 watts of power at 127 beats per minute, well inside his max. And Ralph isn't a bad finisher. He might be a lead-out man today for 1 or 2 of the teammates, because he looks as though he's enjoying it.
Well, the thing to do on these flat stages is to try and conserve as much energy as possible. The only way to do that, if you can conserve energy on a long stage like this, is try and find a point in the pack where you actually get sucked along a fraction. If you ride directly behind a rider in front of you, you can save between 20 and 30% of your energy. But if you can ride in the middle of the pack and get sucked along, you can save an awful lot more energy than that.
Well, 1,000 meters to the sprint, so they should survive at least to fight out the last time bonuses on the day. So even if Robbie McEwen does win now, he shouldn't likely be the leader, because he can't get enough win bonus over Tom Boonen to get the yellow jersey now. He needed the 6 seconds here, so he won't be too worried about that. He's looking for the win rather than the points today.
Well, Tom Boonen can tick one more off, because now there's only, as far as I can see, 2 riders really of the sprinters who have a chance of beating Boonen in the overall classification at the end of the day, and that's Thor Hushovd and Oscar Freire, because they are at 17 and 19 seconds down in the overall standings. I don't think Michael Rogers or George Hincapie will actually go for the sprint this afternoon. Rogers is only 13 seconds down, Hincapie 17 seconds down, but I just wonder if Johan Museo is right. Johan Museo is a consultant with the Quick Step squad, and he reckons today this is a Tom Boonen finish.
Wow, well, we'll wait and see. Museo wasn't a bad rider.
100 metres to go. And I don't think these riders will fight it out here to try and take 6-4 and 2 seconds, or even 6-4 and 2 points, because for them, they're really more interested in keeping the consistency in their sharing of the work at the front end of this group. They now know that the main field is around about a kilometre behind them, because at this speed, 1 minute and 15 seconds corresponds to around about the 1 kilometre, so you can be absolutely certain that the riders in the main field can see them. They can see the cars behind them, they can see the helicopters above them, and they're now starting to get into a situation where they are judging their effort to pull them back, as always, just within sight of the finish. 162 kilometres covered at this point, and that leaves the riders with 26 kilometres to go to the finish.
Salut, je m'appelle Jérôme Pinault et vous regardez le Tour de France sur ITV.
Welcome back to our coverage on ITV4 today of the stage of the Tour de France as we race towards Brittany. Welcome back to the commentary box, which means it's time for the emails. Let's have a look at the first one. It comes from Gavin and Lindsay from Stirling, Scotland. I'm 15, my brother is 10, we both want to be professional riders. Can you tell us how the sprinters and team leaders move forward in the peloton when there's hardly any room? I would have thought skill's the first part of the answer.
And a little bit of courage as well. It's a dangerous thing to do, a very difficult thing to do, and it's one of the things in the sport that you really have to learn. Basically, you have to weave your way through, just moving your elbows and your shoulders to find the gap to get through to go up to the front end of the main field. Very often, a leader will actually ask his teammate, who's usually a little bit bigger, to go through the middle of the pack and make room for him to follow him by. But when it comes down to the sprint, it is absolutely illegal to use your head, use your elbows, and to use your shoulders. And that's what the judges are looking for.
All right, well, let's go on now to Chiswick, where we'll find Abby and Hannah. And they are asking, who has got the best haircut this year? Well, as usual, there are plenty of fashion statements with the hairstyles on the riders in the Tour de France, but this one we think is one of the best, from Anthony Charteau. He tells us this is a tribal design, and he says it will bring him luck. Well, he hasn't won a stage yet, but there's still a long way to go. Now, we can't let it go without commenting on the hairstyle of Laurent Brochard. The reason I've never recognised him on some of our commentaries this week is because after 15 years of having a long mullet, he's finally cut it all off. He looks pretty good, too. And for Abby and Hannah, here's a few more for you to look at.
Get a haircut and get a real job. Clean your act up and don't be a slob. Get it together like your big brother Bob. Why don't you get a haircut and get a real job? Get a real job.
So there you are, Abby and Hannah. Now, no comment on my hairstyle as we quickly move on to the next one. And this comes from Barbara in Lim. And when it rains, do the riders have special tyres for racing, Paul?
No, not anymore. There was an attempt a couple of years ago to develop a rain tyre, but basically in the Tour de France, all of the riders use the same tyres in dry and wet conditions. The only thing that varies, actually, is tyre pressure. Harder tyres for the dry conditions, softer tyres for the wet days.
Well, I reckon that's why there were lots of punctures the other day, because I think with the extreme hot conditions, they had the tyres pumped up that little bit too hard. Our last email today, it comes from Alex in Chelmsford, and it says, I've noticed riders using personal radios during a stage. Is this for inspiring music, or are they talking to each other? I think the answer is the second part of that question. It's not for the music. They are indeed not only talking to each other, which they can do, they also talk mainly to the team manager in the car behind. Because in that car, which we'll call the engine room of the Tour de France, they have television and they have race radio. They know exactly what is happening in the Tour de France. So if you're riding at the back, they will tell you who is riding at the front. But, you know, I don't think it's very fair. Sometimes I like to think riders should be able to think for themselves, and that leads to an element of surprise. Let's get back to the action. 20 kilometres to go to the end of today's stage of the Tour de France. They are still there, these same three riders, but now, Paul, we're just tickling at 1 minute.
Well, you look at the pedalling action now. I think they've decided and realised they're about to get caught. 20 kilometres to go has gone by. and they've lost their enthusiasm. They're beginning to realize now it's not going to work on this occasion. It's a big blow to the morale, especially when you know they've been at the front of the race for around about 70 kilometers. It's a long time at the lead for those three riders. 2 hours heading the race, 2 hours believing they're going to survive, 2 hours believing that the sprinters are going to get it wrong. But the sprinters, when they've got great finishers, rarely do make a mistake.
But again, it's taking a long time to shut this one down. You take a look at the faces of the boys on the front here. It's the same faces every day this week. Cedric Vasseur, Juan Manuel Garate, and people like Johan van Summeren doing all of the work. And they must think, here we go again. And they really hurt themselves to close this race down. Then they slip away and finish behind the race.
But they share in the joy when their teammate, their team man or their team leader gets across the line in first place. That pain and that suffering gets wiped away in the 200 meters that their sprinter takes to get the stage victory.
I guess you'd call it an assist in football these days. You don't get the goal, but at least you help your man get the goal. Well, there they are, the three riders, and television right up behind them. There's the shot from the motorbike. Magnus Bagstedts, the legs on the right. Those bronze legs, they shave them, of course. Cyclists do, always have, and I suspect always will. It's easy for massage, it's easy for treatment should the event of a nasty fall happen. And they're all ready and set to go. And Magnus Bagstedt now has had a long day in this breakaway today. He was once with 18, and then they knew they were in trouble with Tom Bonen riding with them. Once they got rid of him, the peloton didn't chase so hard.
Tightly knit pack. You can see that the wind is actually coming from the left-hand side of the picture, or the right-hand shoulder of the riders, which is why the guys who are doing the pacemaking on the front are using half of the road. They're working very hard to keep the tempo nice and high, but they don't want to give everybody else in the pack an easy ride. Inside a kilometer, the distance between these three leaders now and the men in the front end of the main field. We're looking at 17 kilometers to go to the finish, and they're still holding on to a minute advantage. But I'm convinced that the main field know exactly what they're doing. They've got it all under control as these riders go under another banner welcoming them into the Ille-et-Vilaine department. And this is the department where they will finish, and they will race again tomorrow with the very interesting individual time trial on the road down into Rennes. Next town they will come into will be the small town of Saint-Mervé, and that's where they are now, just going through past the road sign there as they continue to ride today all the way down to the finish down the Vilaine Valley. The Vilaine River is one of the rivers in western France, and its source grows up in the region just that we have left behind us, the department of the Mayenne.
While we look here at Quick Step, Paul, those boys up front are pegged this breakaway for the moment. This 107, they're holding it. They might catch them at around about 10 or 11 kilometers to go, but they are still showing a great deal of defiance. But what worrying me at the moment is the fact that here at the finish, the rain clouds are getting closer and closer. It's becoming quite dark.
The rain clouds are getting very heavy, and that could make the big difference coming into town, because that's basically where we ate last night, right in the heart of this town of Vitré, and where we had dinner was a very tricky roundabout. The riders are going to have to negotiate at about 3 kilometers to go. They've tried to clean it up. They've taken out some of the directional islands, but to me, it's going to be a very tricky run-in for the main field. The main field really, I feel, need to catch these riders before 8 kilometers to go. Otherwise, it's going to be very dangerous. There's a problem at the back here. This looks like Jimmy Casper's had a problem.
Not again. This man always gets problems at this stage of the race.
It's definitely not the time to have a flat tire inside 15 kilometers to go. But as far as Jimmy's concerned, it doesn't matter. He's won his Tour de France so far, because he's going to go away with the stage victory under his belt.
Yes, he got the day one road race victory. Stage one, day two of the Tour. He was right on it. First time he's won a stage of the Tour de France, and he beat all of the recognised sprinters to the title. Well, that's going to give him all the drive he needs to see Paris this time around. He's left the race in tears before injured. He's finished last in the race twice, what we call the Lanterne Rouge, the red light of the race. And now he's had the misfortune to have a puncture, but at least it's not like Zabel the other day, who punctured in the sprint and he was out of it approaching the line.
Better off having it at 15 kilometres to go than 1.5 kilometres to go, and everybody's travelling along at 50 kilometres an hour. But just yesterday, Phil, I saw some excerpts of a new IMAX movie which was released just before the start of the Tour de France. It's called Wired to Win, and a lot of it features the suffering of Jimmy Casper in that Tour de France, where, if you remember back to that tour, he rode the first few stages with a big collar around his neck because he was involved in that first stage crash that took out Levi Leipheimer.
That's right, and he did very, very well. In fact, the people that made that film said what a gracious character he was to cooperate with them when he was obviously in terrible pain. Well, the lights are on now because it's getting quite dark here at the finishing line. I hope that no storm hits this race before they come home, because over what is actually a cobbled approach to the town of Vitré, they will become like an ice rink if it does rain down there.
Axel Merckx just over to the other side of the road there, riding at the front, looking after Floyd Andis. Cofidis have dropped back 3 riders here to try and pace their man Jimmy Casper to the rear end of the main field. They're going to have to take a lot of risks now to move over on the right-hand side of the road and try and get their sprinter up to the front. Casper wasn't too far off yesterday. He crossed the line in 14th place in that rather chaotic sprint to the line, where the man who got the best of everybody was Oscar Freire. Just look at how Tom Boonen rides at the front. He floats around with hardly any energy at all.
Half a minute the gap.
Hi, I'm Bobby Julich, and you're watching the Tour de France on ITV.
Well, I'm standing on the finish line with one of the former fastest men in the world. He's a winner in all 3 of the Grand Tours, Marcel Wust. Marcel, no stranger to Vitré.
No, on this finishing straight, I finally fulfilled my kid's dream to win a stage in the Tour de France. It's 6 years and 2 days ago now, but I can really remember well.
Marcel Wust dives across to the left. He tries to grab the wheel of Zabel, and as they come up to the line, Wust may have this one. He's got it. Marcel Wust has done it on the line.
And then going on the podium, listening to the music, was a great day for me.
So is the finish we've got today very similar to that?
It is, well, basically almost the same finish. Coming through Vitré, they changed one little corner, which made the finishing straight even longer. It was 1,200 meters 6 years ago, and it's 1,600 now. But basically, it's the same stage finish, even if the riders come from the other way.
Well, the last 6K looks pretty messy to me, and I know you've been out there this morning on the bike. Is there any particular obstacles you think they've got to look out for?
Well, at 4 to go, there's a roundabout, which the peloton will probably scream around at 70k an hour, as you know. Then it's slightly uphill through Vitré, so that should not be too much of a drama. And then, well, on the finishing straight, I hope everybody stays out of trouble and the sprinter teams get a little bit more organized than they have been the last couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. It has been somewhat disorganized this year, certainly a little bit different. A lot of one-on-one sprinting. Have you got any ideas as to why that might be?
Well, I think there is no team which is actually much stronger than all the others. And that means at the end it's a little bit more messy, a little bit more unpredictable as well. And that makes surprises possible, like Oscar Freire, who without a teammate at all won in Caen yesterday. So that was quite a big surprise.
It was a fantastic sprint finish, and I've actually had to make the prognostics for the last couple of days, but this time I'm going to put your neck on the block. So is that your tip for the day?
No, I'd rather say jamais 2 sans 3, like French say, never 2 without 3. Robert McEwen is my tip for the day.
And as the peloton races here towards the line, I have to say it is getting darker and darker. And we don't rain now would cause chaos in this peloton, and it might, of course, aid the escape of the 3 riders who are now less than 30 seconds in front.
And however, they are 2.5 kilometers from coming into the outskirts of Vitré, and they will be realizing that. They will know that. The team manager will have given them that information. They will hope to survive into the outskirts of town, because with the road starting to dampen a fraction now, been very hot for the last few days. When you get a small covering of dampness on a surface like this, it makes it treacherous. It turns a good racing road into an ice rink.
As Magnus Bagstedt there now begin to wonder, what am I doing in this breakaway? Are we going to succeed or not? No one allowed in the gap now, apart from the odd referee on the motorbike and the policeman who guide the race around France. 17 seconds is the gap. They can't possibly survive, but they're not going to stop trying. Look at the face of Johan van Summeren, trying to get these riders up to the leaders because they want the sprinters to have their say on the eve of the time trial.
And do you know what he's thinking about? He's thinking about one thing. Oh, my back hurts so much, but but Robbie's going to take over. Robbie's going to do it for Team Davitamon Lotto, for Belgium and for Australia, because the Belgians have really adopted Robbie McEwen here. He conducts his interviews after the finish not only in Australian but also in Flemish, and pretty well too.
Yeah, well, he's got a Flemish wife, Angelique. I'm sure if he gets it grammatically wrong, she'll put him right when he gets home. This is now the French champion on the right. What a way for the French champion to bring the race towards Brittany here today, riding in the leading group. When the camera pulls back, it's always the sign of doom, because underneath come the head of the peloton now. A lot of riders want to be near the front but not on the front, and look at the difference of the movement in the peloton now as they try to reposition. Brad is not going to give up. Look at him go.
Look at his face. It's got anger and anguish written all over it. At the same time, looks over his shoulder. Well, you can't see round the corner there. That will give him a little bit of hope, because he can't yet see the front end of the main field. He'll say, we'll push it a bit more, we'll try and survive until we get into town. If we get into town, it might get confusing, we might survive, but this is a very long drag. It's Team Lampre on the front now, trying to sort it out for their man Bernati.
Well, they've also got Alessandro Ballan, who was up there yesterday now, and Jens Voigt is in there looking at the computer. He also is getting a high heartbeat just now as he tries to get a little bit excited. Maybe we've seen pictures of Stuart O'Grady today looking a lot more relaxed with his broken vertebrae. Maybe he's feeling a bit better.
Salvatore Commesso, the man with the beard on Team Lampre, over to the right-hand side, getting back into the line. These guys will not give up. Look at the face of Bra here, just looking in front of him to see if he can see the top of this climb. Doesn't look like a climb to you sitting at home in front of the TV, but this has dragged up now for around about 1 kilometre. It's down now, Phil, to 40 metres. Then it'll be 30, then it'll be 20, then it will be all over.
And then it'll be 10 seconds the other way, because I doubt these boys will hold on to the peloton now once they come to the top of this climb. We are running into the last 6.5 kilometres now to the finish. They might just get to see the 5 kilometre banner if they are lucky, but after that they'll be in the heart of the pack here. A little bit of concern from us, because we know that the centre of Vitré is very narrow and quite dangerous, and let's hope they can get through Vitré. Then it becomes a fabulous approach to the line.
Well, it's looking good for an organised chase through town, because one team, Team Lampre, has decided this afternoon we're going to string it all out. They had all of their men at the front. They are thinking about the big man who was caught out in that crash at 4.5 kilometres to go yesterday, Daniele Bernati. But these three men, Phil, they know the main fielder behind them. The main fielder at only 35 metres, but they will not give up.
Well, they're also making the other teams chase. I mean, Magnus Bagstedt has a guy on the team, Luca Paolini, who could win this race in the sprint, and if he's forcing the others to chase him, then they're taking the pressure off Paolini, who will only follow. So there's still tactics to be played, even if the catch is almost done and dusted. 11 seconds is the gap now, coming down rapidly. 8 seconds. The riders in the peloton now, they're getting near the top of their stress levels, and they're getting near the top of their maximum heart rates. These boys in mauve and blue are racing for two riders, two sprinters. Ballan and Daniel, I forgot his name.
Bernati.
Thank you very much.
Daniel Bernati crashed yesterday, 4.5 kilometres to go. Big long line, but this big long line is organised, yet they cannot close down the last 30 metres of those three leaders. Once they get caught, they will get probably squeezed straight out of the back of the pack. Now it's Geslin. Look at the way his shoulders are rocking and rolling. There's not much power left in his body anymore. There's a little bit left in those thighs. They look over the shoulder. Sorry, guys, we're not going to survive. But you know what? If you want to win the stage this afternoon, you come to us, because we're not going to wait for you.
Well, can you believe it? 4.5 kilometres from the line. The peloton have done it again. They've caught all the fugitives of the day. Oh, well, they haven't quite, but they will by 4 kilometres, and then we're all together. A mass charge through Vitré, and that's not for the nervous, I can tell you, as you'll see in a moment. And then out away from the railway station, steady climb, a sharp right, sharp left, and then we're heading out towards the finish. And Florent Bras says, catch me if you can.
Well, I'm the French national champion, bleu, blanc, rouge, red, white and blue. I am not going to give up. If you want to sprint and take the glory on this stage of the Tour de France, come and catch us. This has been an interminable chase. They've been at 35, 40 metres for the last couple of kilometres, and Team Lampre are now getting themselves organised at 4 kilometres to go. And 3 kilometres to go is the nasty circuit that the riders will have to go through.
This is the first time this tour we've seen a chain of riders from the same team on the front. They must be confident. There is the catch now at 4 kilometres from the finish. What a great effort by those three. Hang on in there, boys. Stay with the peloton. But it's interesting to see that Quick Step and Lamprey are the two teams getting this together. Boonen on the right, Hushoff on his wheel. Of course, we won't see Robbie McEwen for a while yet.
Well, Robbie McEwen is about to take off his cloak, the cloak of Harry Potter, the one that makes you invisible, but he will appear at 150 metres to go. Lamprey have got this organisation with a certain amount of help now coming from Quick Step. They need to keep it fast. They need to keep it in a long line. Otherwise, it's going to get very dangerous. They're looking now at around about 3.5 kilometres to go. This is the drag up through the centre of Vitré. There is the indication. Vitré is where we are. There is 3 kilometres to go. Now it's organised. Now this is going to be a good sprint. Keep it long, keep it straight and safe.
Well, this is where they cross the centre of the square here now, with the railway station on the right. It gets a bit of cobblestones as they start to go up towards the line now. And Tom Boonen has got control of things. That's the area where the railway station is now as we start the climb. Boonen has moved up here now nicely onto the place. But watch out with Lamprey. They're confident today.
They're feeling good. They've got the organisation. When a team works for you like this, it puts responsibility onto the shoulders of the sprinter. The pale blue jersey on the wheel of Tom Boonen there is David Kopp. He was right up in the sprint there yesterday. Round the corner nice and safely. They've got through town without too much of an incident. Tom Boonen is riding right up at the front end of the main field, but it's the Lamprey squad for Daniele Benati who are thinking about it here this afternoon. But Boonen will rely on his last men to try and lead him up to the line. He'll rely, of course, on men like Pozzato. He'll rely on men like Matteo Tossato to try and get him up to the last 300 or 400 metres. Then he will try and unleash his sprint. It's not worked so far this tour. It might work today.
Well, they've just gone under the 2 kilometres banner there as they race towards the line now. And Lamprey still have control of this, which is a good sign. We haven't seen a train of the right team do this at all week, but now they're looking good. I've just seen Luca Paolini in the lime green jersey popping in and out of our picture. David Kopp is the first time in that light blue jersey to the right. Watch him, he packs a very good sprint finish, and he got it into action yesterday. These boys now, a lot of pushing and shoving further down. Desperation moments here now, because a lot of riders have been caught out of position.
The pushing and shoving is to get onto the wheel of Tom Boonen. They're all up there trying to fight to get onto Boonen's wheel. They feel he's got the confidence here this afternoon. He wants to win in the yellow jersey. 85 on the front, Salvatore Commesso, a two-time Italian national champion, not thinking about victory himself, but thinking about Daniele Benati. There is the green jersey, Robbie McEwen, right down at the bottom of the picture in around about 20th place, but he's got alongside him here at Stegemans. Wait for it, wait long and hard on this course, because this is a very long finishing straight. It's around about 2 kilometres. They're looking in front of them. They will see the banner over the road, which is 1 kilometre to go. But Phil, this kilometre is going to be interminable.
Well, I'll tell you what, McEwen is deep in the depths of this peloton. He's going to have to move up pretty quickly now at 800 metres to go, because Quickstep have got Boonen right up there now. Freire is on his wheel, Hushoff is on his wheel, but McEwen is a little bit washed away at the moment. Now the launch for the line being done by Tom Boonen's Quickstep team on the far right. Watch out for the all-green arrival of the jersey of McEwen. An awful lot of work to do yet. Looking over his shoulders, and they've made Lamprey take up the running for Daniel Benati and Balan, but still no sign of McEwen. Hushoff has got the wheel of Boonen. As they come up, Zabel is in there trying to win on his birthday. He's got Boonen's wheel. Boonen leaving this at 500 metres, 300 metres to go. And now the lead out to try and take Benati. Here comes the run for the line though, and he's bringing McEwen for him. Gert Stegmans made the mistake yesterday. He's just launched McEwen at the line. McEwen is going to win this again, and Boonen has made another mess of it. Bobby McEwen has done it again. I don't believe it. That man is something else.
Well, he was so far down with about 500 metres to go, I thought he'd made a mess of it, but alongside of him he had Gert Stegemans. He waited, he knew this was a long sprint, he knew you had to wait until the last minute. When he saw the gap, he said, Stegemans, go, 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 and that's when Stegemans went. He was straight on his wheel, he came up past everybody. Boonen again making a technical mistake in the middle there, getting boxed out by Jimmy Casper. Look at his face there, Robbie McEwen. This is the win. He really is having a ball.
Messed up yesterday. We got it perfect today. Stegemans again, just he starts his engine and takes off, and nobody who's doing a lead out for their sprinter has got an answer to his power. I don't think the other sprinter's got an answer to his power. I just sit there, I even backed off him again and just went on the inside of him and even though I felt like I was starting to slow, I just was so wound up. And number 3, there we go.
As opposed to mistake number 5 for Tom Burnham, flicking away from his line and losing momentum in the scrabble for position. Never really in contention, and clearly annoyed as he crossed the line. There's confirmation of the result. McEwen ahead of Daniele Benati, who's now been 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd and 2nd. So he must be due a win himself, if only at poker. Burnham led home the usual suspects, and the big names rolled home safely in the bunch, all except for big Magnus Backstedt, who rolled in 2.12 down. But he enjoyed his day out front, even though, as he told Graham Bell, he knew it was doomed well before the catch happened.
I started feeling it with about 10 Ks to go, you know, like, yeah, we were just under a minute, and I thought, well, there's no way this is going to go all the way home, but you still want to try and believe that you're going to make it, and you never know, something might happen back in the peloton that cause a bit of a stop to the riding, and, you know, some of those little bits, that's going to give you a stage win, like, so next time, eh?
Any messages for back home?
Love you guys, see you soon.
Although hopefully not before July the 23rd. So Robbie McEwen's regular stage win, a victory every other day, keeps him in the green jersey, and in recognition of his achievement, we've given him a second soundbite.
Yeah, this is the best tour I've ever ridden until this point. Last year I had 3 wins, but it took me 13 stages. Now we're only up to stage 6, and maybe I'm going to become superstitious, because I was saying to my wife this morning, in the Giro I won stages 2, 4 and 6, and here in the Tour I'd won stages 2 and 4, so it can't be otherwise that I'm going to win today. And I don't often make predictions, but it was great work by the team. You know, we had to close down a couple of moves early in the race, and then we put a guy up to make sure the brake came back, and in the sprint itself, Stigman's just, he did the same perfect job that he did on stage 4. It went a bit wrong yesterday, we talked about it, and we really concentrated on our tactic today, and again he was really, really super strong. Like the other day, it was like sitting on a TGV and all they had to do was get off at my stop.
If Robbie's commute to the finish gets any more comfortable, he'll have time to annoy the other sprinters by calling the wife on his mobile. And as well as leading the green jersey competition, he's up into 2nd overall behind Tom Burnham. Otherwise, the top 6 is the same, with the time gaps widening slightly because of the sprinters' time bonuses. Outside the top 6, everyone remains in pretty much the same position too, including David Miller, riding well so far, but reluctant to commit himself ahead of tomorrow's time trial.
I honestly don't know. It's strange. I haven't got a clue. I mean, to be honest, I'd be disappointed if I was outside the top 5. I will be disappointed with that. I won't hide that. So, but at the same time, I'm gambling a bit, saying that that's my intention. So, but I'm going to give it everything, and we'll see. I'll actually have a true indication of where I am after tomorrow.
You're about 33 seconds away from the yellow jersey. Now, I don't want to make you say anything rash, but if you want to say something rash, now's the time.
No, I'm not saying anything rash. Oh my God. No. No, like I said, I can only get myself in trouble. I wear yellow anyway, it's all good.
Tom Burnham's in yellow too, and it's not so good. The most miserable podium occupant for years, leading the race, but trailing Robbie McEwen where it matters in the final 100 metres. Well, I think we can stick our necks out and say that neither Tom Burnham nor Robbie McEwen is going to win tomorrow, because it's the time trial. And Chris, in this most amorphous of tours, we might finally start to see things taking shape as far as the overall contenders are concerned. Who do you expect to see do well?
Well, 2 people are definitely there for the win are going to be George Hincapie and Michael Rogers. Both of them been finishing consistently around about the 30s every day, and on the grippy finishes that we have had, that's a cracking indication of form.
Interesting, though, because they're not just riding for the overall, they're actually fighting for the leadership of their own teams, because there are a couple of contenders in each camp.
Yeah, probably less difficult for George Hincapie being American in an American team. If he starts to do well, then they're just going to jump behind him. Very difficult for Michael Rogers, though, being in a German team, of course. I think he's going to need even more than a good time trial to surpass Kloden as the preferred leader. He's probably going to go into the mountains before that one's settled.
Now, David Miller likes to time trial. He's looked very comfortable on his return after 2 years away from racing, though, so I suppose he's a bit of an unknown quantity.
Yeah, David's form seems to be great. I mean, just on the back of training, he seems to have really got himself where he needs to be. He's easing himself into the Tour. I think I'll be very surprised if he's not in the top 5 in the time trial.
Should be a good day's racing. And incidentally, Saturday is also the closing day of our competition, so tonight is your penultimate chance to have a go at answering the question.
What we want to know is who won the green jersey competition in last year's Tour de France, and here are your options. A. Thor Hushovd, B. Michael Rasmussen, and C. Lance Armstrong. Now you can either call us with the answer on 09012 93 33 93 or text the word tour and either A, B or C to 63337. First prize is a weekend for two in Paris with tickets for the final stage of the tour. Copies of Matt Rendell's biography of Marco Pantani for 5 runners-up. Entries cost £1, by the way, and the lines are open until midnight tomorrow.
Now then, tomorrow we're over on ITV3, which is our weekend home throughout the tour, and we'll be on live from 3:15 with coverage of the time trial. 52 kilometres from Saint-Grégoire to Rennes, with the guarantee of a new race leader at the end of it. See you then.